Sarah Chen stared at the brain scan displayed on her monitor, her fingers drumming against her desk. The hippocampus lit up like a Christmas tree, exactly as it should when accessing genuine memories. Yet something felt wrong.
Tell me again about the man you saw, Mrs. Reynolds,
She said, adjusting the neural interface headset on her patient's temples. The device was her life's work, a breakthrough in memory recovery that had helped dozens of trauma victims find closure.
He was tall,
Mrs. Reynolds whispered, her eyes closed.
6'2", maybe more. Dark hair greying at the temples. He wore a brown leather jacket with brass buttons. I remember the buttons catching the streetlight.
Her voice carried the dreamy quality typical of patients under memory regression. Sarah made another note in her tablet. This was the third victim of the Nighthawk Killer she'd interviewed this week. Each had survived their encounter, but all had suffered trauma-induced amnesia until now. Her technique was finally giving them their memories back. There was only one problem. Mrs. Reynolds' description contradicted everything the others had said. Julie Morris had described a short, stocky man in a blue windbreaker. Thomas Webb swore he'd seen someone of medium height wearing a black hoodie. Each victim's memory showed the same neural patterns indicating authentic recall, yet their stories were mutually exclusive. Sarah switched off the interface and helped Mrs. Reynolds sit up.
you did wonderfully today.
She said, maintaining her professional composure despite her growing unease.
We'll schedule a follow-up for next week.
After her patient left, Sarah pulled up the case files on her tablet. 3 victims, 3 different descriptions, all displaying the neural signatures of genuine memories. It defied everything she knew about memory formation and recall. Unless... She opened her research notes on memory implantation, theoretical work she'd abandoned years ago when the ethical implications became too troubling. The same techniques she'd developed to help recover lost memories could, theoretically, be used to create new ones. A chill ran down her spine as she spotted a familiar diagram. Someone had accessed these files recently, though she couldn't remember giving anyone permission. She checked the access logs, but they showed nothing unusual. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept seeing faces in her mind, the killer as described by each victim. They merged and shifted, never settling on a single image. She got up and made herself some tea, then pulled out her old journals, searching for inconsistencies. The more she read, the more her certainty crumbled. Notes appeared in her handwriting that she didn't remember writing. Case details shifted between pages. Even her own research methodology seemed to change halfway through, becoming something darker, more focused on manipulation than recovery. She found herself thinking about her neural interface device. Had she really developed it to help trauma victims, or was that itself an implanted memory? The killer would need intimate knowledge of her work to manipulate memories so perfectly. Who could know her research better than... Sarah's hands began to shake. She grabbed her phone to call Detective Martinez, her contact on the case, but stopped short. The last call log to Martinez was from 3 months ago, a call she distinctly remembered making yesterday. She rushed to her home office and booted up her computer. The case files were there, but they were different now. The victims' descriptions matched perfectly. They all described the same person. They all described her. Sarah caught her reflection in the darkened computer screen. For a moment she saw grey touching her temples, just like Mrs. Reynolds had described. She reached up to touch her hair, and her hand bumped against something cool and metallic. She was wearing a neural interface headset. She didn't remember putting it on. In the window behind her reflection, a shadow moved. Sarah turned, but it was already too late. The last thing she saw was a familiar face, her own, smiling back at her, holding another neural interface device.
Time to make some new memories.
The figure said, in a voice identical to her own. And then there was only darkness. followed by the soft hum of machinery rewriting everything she thought she knew.